Hey, how's it going guys, Chris here, and welcome to another Battlefield 1 weapon guide. In today's video, we're going to be checking out the Nagant Revolver, a strong, sturdy sidearm which came along in the name of the Tsar DLC, available to be used by all classes. So the Nagant M1895 is a fairly primitive revolver which functions using a pretty unique gas seal system, essentially forcing the cylinder forwards when the gun is cocked, closing the gap between the cylinder and the barrel, thus boosting the muzzle velocity of the fired round, which is a kinda similar mechanism used in the Piper M1893 revolving carbine, that can be equipped by a tanker or pilot in Battlefield 1. The Nagant M1895 was chambered for the 7.62 Nagant round, designed specifically for the gun. But unlike most ammunition, each bullet actually sat completely within its casing, hidden just underneath the mouth of the cartridge. The reason why the 7.62 caliber was picked would have mainly to simplify the manufacture of the revolver's ammunition and barrel, as the Mosin Nagant M91, being the Russian service rifle at the time, also had the same bore diameter of 7.62mm. So with them both being popular weapons used by the Russian military, both being manufactured by the same arsenals too, this kinda seemed like a logical thing to do, making the revolver's production a hell of a lot easier. Despite being a gun which was designed in the mid-1890s, one which is still actually being used today in some areas of the world, the Nagant Revolver had a bit of an old-fashioned way to reload its rounds, as it featured a loading gate where cartridges would have to be manually ejected and replaced one by one, just like the Gasser and the BF1 1889. This system was pretty much obsolete by the time the M1895 Nagant came along, as it was just a really finicky, time-consuming way to reload revolver cartridges, especially when you had the likes of the break action Webley out at the same time, which could simply eject all 6 of its empty casings at once in one swift move. Despite being a weapon often associated with Russia, the Nagant Revolver actually originated in Belgium, where it was designed and made by the Nagant brothers Emil and Leon. The brothers were both already known well by Tsar Nicholas, with them being involved with the creation of the Mosin Nagant M91 Russian service rifle, and after taking a look at the M1895 Nagant Revolver, he was quite impressed with its gas seal mechanism and thought it would be a worthy handgun for Russian military. So the manufacturing rights were bought in 1898, and production was moved to Russia in the same year. This led to it being the standard issue sidearm for Russia during World War I, with the weapon often being used alongside the Mosin Nagant rifle during combat. Ironically, although the M1895 Nagant was a weapon chosen by the Tsar to be used by his army, it would also be the very same weapon used to violently execute him and his family in cold blood in July 1918, as 7 Nagant revolvers, along with 7 other handguns, were wielded by communist revolutionaries to exterminate the Russian royal family and their servants, bringing an end to the Romanov dynasty. The Nagant Revolver would continue being made and used by military forces for many years after, though by the year of 1933, Soviet Russia started to slowly replace the M1895 with the newer semi-automatic Tokarev pistol. With that said, the Nagant Revolver would still be a common weapon in Russia's arsenal, still being produced and used in large quantities against the Nazis in the Second World War. And even though it was really outdated by this time, the revolver's sturdiness and reliability kept it going through the ages, making it one of the most iconic handguns in history. Now, if you want to unlock the Nagant Revolver, you're first going to have to own the In the Name of the Tsar DLC and have it installed. Then all you're going to have to do is simply get 20 kills with the Luger Pistol. The Luger P08 can be equipped on any class as a secondary weapon, so this is a pretty easy one to get hold of, and all the kills you get with it are just going to accumulate over time as you play the game. But anyway, let's check out those stats. As far as the power goes, the Nagant has a fairly interesting damage model, in the sense that it's a bit different to the other revolvers in the game, as its bullets are going to inflict the same sort of damage as the Mars automatic pistols rounds. Up to the range of 14 meters, the Nagant Revolver is going to dish out its maximum damage of 40, but from here, it's going to start to decline down over distance to 23 at 30 meters. Meaning that overall, the Nagant actually deals the weakest amount of close range damage out of all of the revolvers, typically taking 3 bullets to kill up to 22 meters. Though having a slightly higher, longer range damage often allows it to kill in less bullets over distance, which might generally make it a more reliable option for finishing off a weakened opponent further away. Because quite a lot of the other revolvers are able to kill in just 2 bullets under 10 meters, this means that the Nagant is going to be at a bit of a disadvantage in comparison when used on its own in CQC. It's not going to be quite as effective at taking down players quickly nearby, as having to land an extra shot in such close proximities can be a very demanding thing to do, especially when there's just so many weapons in Battlefield 1 that can take you down rapidly at these kind of ranges. With that said, it's a consistent killer, as unlike a lot of other revolvers that have their damage drop off at a faster rate, making them less powerful further away, the Nagant can hold on to its power a bit better, being able to take down another player in 5 bullets max, as it actually deals the highest minimum damage value out of all of the revolvers in the game, including the gasser. Along with having the same damage output as the Mars automatic, the Nagant Revolver also fires at the same speed too, with its 200 RPM fire rate. As far as the revolvers go, this is an average sort of speed, with the gasser and the number 3 both shooting at a slower rate, and with some of the others, like the P08 and the Auto Revolver, firing 25 RPM faster, along with the Bulldog having a 30% quicker RPM too, having a slight edge when it comes to speed. This does affect the weapon's time to kill a bit, and because it can often take 3 bullets to take down players in CQC, the Nagant Revolver isn't exactly a powerhouse, as it's got one of the slowest kill times out of all of the secondary weapons, including the weaker semi-automatic pistols, which generally fire at a much quicker rate and only require 1 more shot to kill at close range. With the gun having a muzzle velocity of 335 meters per second, this isn't quite as speedy as the Mars automatic, despite them having a lot of similar statistics, and when compared with the other secondary weapons in general, there's quite a few other guns that have a higher bullet speed. But the Nagant has the quickest velocity out of the revolvers, making it a more ideal weapon for longer range firefights in comparison to those. Fortunately for the Nagant, although you might have to lead targets over distance a little bit more than you would with the Mars because of that lower bullet speed, you will be able to draw the Nagant out a bit quicker as a trade-off, being able to switch over from your primary weapon in 0.55 seconds, the same as the P08 1889. It's not miles quicker than the Mars, and there are quite a few other handguns that can be drawn out faster than this, but it just might make the difference if you need to quickly finish someone off with a single shot, something that the Nagant can often be a tad better at doing than the Mars automatic for this reason. Taking a look at the Nagant's recoil pattern, we can see that it's actually the most accurate, stable revolver in the game, having some of the lowest figures of the whole bunch. It's got the lowest vertical recoil of the revolvers with a kick value of 3, and its 0.8 horizontal recoil is going to make it a more precise weapon to use than quite a lot of the others too, matching up quite nicely with the support's Bulldog. The Nagant also has 25% more stability than the Mars pistol, with that having a vertical kick value of 4 instead of 3. And it's generally going to be better at staying on target than the other revolvers, which is essential for landing that extra bullet in CQC in order to kill an opponent. This also means that it's a little bit easier to fire at the gun's maximum rate and land your shots, though it's still best to remember that the gun's still not going to be quite as accurate or stable as the faster firing semi-automatic pistols, with those all generally being more precise weapons. So although the Nagant's kick is more manageable, it's still probably not going to perform amazingly if you're spamming the trigger and blasting those rounds out all over the place without lining them up first. As you've got to remember that at the end of the day, it's still a revolver, and revolvers are known to have a notoriously high kick. It's just that the Nagant is the best of a bad bunch in the recoil department. Another thing that's going to give the Nagant a slight accuracy advantage over the Mars pistol is the fact that it has a 50% faster spread decrease rate to go along with that lower vertical kick. So consecutive shots are going to be even more accurate, down to the weapon being able to recover from spread a little bit faster in both ADS and while firing from the hip, meaning bullets are less likely to stray off target as you fire those shots off one by one. Now, this is the part where I get to highlight one of the best and one of the downright worst factors of using the Nagant Revolver, as it handles ammunition in a pretty interesting way. The good news is, the Nagant can hold one more round in its cylinder than the other revolvers, bumping its ammo capacity up to a total of 7 rounds. And although this is a fairly average sort of figure if you compare it to the semi-automatic pistols, it's actually a nice bonus to have, as revolvers can often be risky weapons to run with, holding such a low amount of shots in their cylinders. And this at least gives you one extra chance to put your target down, even if it'll probably take that extra shot to kill up close anyway. The bad news is, the Nagant Revolver has some truly diabolical reload times, some of the worst in the whole game, as it can take up to 11.7 seconds to perform a tactical reload for the sake of 6 rounds, which even by revolver standards is just bloody terrible. The other revolvers, which utilise loading gates, take a pretty long time to reload too, usually taking around about 8 to 9 seconds to perform a full reload, but the Nagant's going to take an extra 3 or 4 seconds on top of that. Fortunately, you can completely replace the cylinder whenever you've used up all 7 rounds, and this is going to be quicker, taking 6.8 seconds of your time, which is still pretty slow, but miles better than hanging around for another 5 seconds more. This is actually almost as quick as reloading just 2 bullets back into the gun, and not much faster than reloading only 1, which is going to take 5 seconds, quite a long time to wait for a single shot. So if you really need to get that ammo back ASAP, it's best to keep this in mind and fire off that last round or 2 in exchange for a less vulnerable situation. But anyway, in conclusion, the Nagant Revolver is actually a bit of a blend between the Mars automatic pistol and the other revolvers already in the game. This means that although it's got a greater amount of power than the lighter semi-auto pistols, it's not going to pack as much close range punch as the heavy revolvers, often taking an extra shot to put someone down in CQC. Combined with a fairly average sort of fire rate, this makes the Nagant one of the slowest killing sidearms in the whole game when used on its own. Though it does retain its damage a bit better over distance, having one of the highest minimum damage values of all the secondary weapons. So this might make it a more suitable gun for finishing weakened players off over all ranges, as opposed to being a trusty backup weapon to whip out as an alternative to your primary. Probably the best thing about the Nagant is the fact that you've got the most manageable recoil pattern out of all of the revolvers. So although it's not quite as accurate as the smaller semi-auto pistols, it's still probably going to be a bit easier to land shots with, having a lower amount of kick to contend with. It has a steadier recoil pattern than the Mars automatic, along with having a faster spread decrease rate too. So this gives the Nagant Revolver a slight advantage when it comes to landing shots. Though when it comes to handling ammunition, the Mars pistol wipes the floor with the Nagant, being able to hold more rounds and reload them at much quicker speeds. The Nagant does hold an extra bullet than the average revolver, which is probably going to be necessary with it taking an extra shot to kill up close, but because it takes so long to reload, this really goes against it being very productive as a standalone weapon. You're going to be extremely vulnerable a lot, and you'll need to find safe places to see those reloads out all the time. But as a means as a last resort sidearm, to take down enemies low on health weakened by a primary weapon, the Nagant's extra bullet should come in handy. Overall, the Nagant Revolver isn't exactly the most versatile weapon, often being a risky gun to use down to its inability to kill and reload quickly, making it a tricky one to do well with in a close range gunfight. But having the best revolver recoil pattern, and dealing a decent amount of range damage for a sidearm, makes it a fairly dependable weapon to use as a finishing off tool, functioning as a good way to deliver that final blow, when your primary weapon runs dry. So that's just about all I've got for you in this one. Hope you enjoyed the guide. Give me a thumbs up if you did, and come and check out my channel and subscribe if you want to see more. Take it easy guys, and I'll see you in the next episode.